What I remember about the last 4 years is how cities across the United States were on fire, how dangerous it was to be in the streets. Today, you are going to learn why I truly believe that we are going to be seeing in the near future extreme civil unrest and experiencing extreme danger for us everyday average Americans, again, here in about a year. And here is why I say just in about a year we're going to start seeing all this civil unrest and extreme danger is because as of the time of this video, right now it appears it's going to be Trump versus Biden in our next presidential election. And with recent aggregate polls, not just cherry-picked polls, but aggregated polls, it shows that Biden is not doing too well. Now, I know the media tries to paint a prettier picture of how the economy and stuff like that's actually doing, but us regular everyday Americans, no matter what the media tries to tell us, no matter what the White House tries to tell us, we know how the economy is doing every time we go to pump gas or we go to the grocery store. So I believe that there's a high likelihood that in about a year from now, when the next presidential election happens, despite even election fraud and other stuff like that, I believe that there's a high likelihood that President Trump is going to be our next president. And if Trump is reelected, I think that we are going to see a lot of riots and extreme danger and stuff like that in our streets, but not for the same reasons that many other people think that we'll see those riots. And here's why I think that we need to start taking measures now to protect ourselves against the violent left should Trump get elected a second time. The first reason is that if Trump's second presidency is anything like his first presidency, we will have no or little to no new wars, and also the economy will probably do better. To put it simply, average Americans will have more money in their pockets and they will feel better about what's going on in the United States and then globally also. They'll just feel better because they'll have more money and they won't be so concerned with the events that's going on around them. And violent leftists and globalists, those type of people hate America First type policies that put extra money in our accounts, that don't have new wars being started. Violent leftists and globalists cannot have the average American being happy underneath an America First type of presidency. They can't have the average American enjoying life underneath America First policies because America First policies get in the way of the policies that they want to implement to destroy the United States from within. So what the violent leftists and the globalists can't have is the average American saying, you know what? Things went very well underneath President Trump. So as I go to vote in this next election, I'm going to vote for a presidential candidate that practices the same type of policies that Trump has. So I truly believe that if Trump does get elected a second time, that violent leftists and globalists will do very bad things so that the average American forgets about the extra money in his wallet and forgets about the fact that we're not entering into any new wars and there's relative global peace. That way, when the average American is heading to the next presidential election voting place, then he is going to be more apt to remember the violence and everything else that he saw during the Trump presidency, and he'll remember that violence rather than the extra money he had in his pocket and the relative global peace. A mantra that I've always kind of carried with me, and it served me well in my law enforcement career, is that you have to think like the monster to defeat the monster. You have to think like the monster without becoming the monster, but you have to think like him in order to defeat him. So if I were a violent leftist or a globalist and I did not want another Trump type of president to be elected after Trump serves his next 4 years, the way I would go about ensuring that that does not happen is to ensure that the average American voter does not have fond memories of that second Trump presidency. And the way that I would ensure that the average American voter did not have fond memories of that second Trump presidency is by having violent riots and extreme danger happen across the whole United States for most of that 4 years of that second presidency. So if I were a violent leftist or a globalist, what I would really strive to have happen in Trump's second presidency is for the average American voter, as they're walking up to the election polls to cast their vote, is for that average voter to say, what I remember about the last 4 years is how cities across the United States were on fire, how dangerous it was to be in the streets. Again, if I were the monster, what I would want is for the average American voter to forget about the extra money that they have in their pocketbook and to forget about how there's not new extra wars, and for me to remember how violent the streets were here in the United States. So what exactly does massive civil unrest and riots and stuff like that mean for everyday Americans like you and I? Well, the first thing for me, that will mean that if Trump gets elected a second time, that will mean for me, I will be avoiding downtown areas and major city roads or major highways that are around downtown areas, because that is places that Antifa and violent leftists like to block the road, trap people in traffic jams, and attack the drivers. And then if for some reason I am forced to go near a downtown area of a city, then I will be sure that I am legally armed and probably also even carrying body armor with me. Now, I also fear that violent leftists and domestic terrorists may even attack infrastructure here in the United States during a second Trump presidency. And the reason why I believe that there's a very good high likelihood of that is because they will want to do anything that they can to make life miserable for the average American voter in the United States, again, during that time of a second Trump presidency. If they can knock out your electricity and other utilities like that over the course of days or weeks, again, that just makes your life miserable during that Trump presidency. And again, you'll be more apt to remember how miserable life was when you go to vote the next time, rather than remembering that you had extra money in your pocket or that there wasn't new wars being started. So what does the possibility of infrastructure attacks mean for regular Americans like you and I? Well, I think it will be few of us to be able to produce our own electricity in case these attacks do happen. And the amount of electricity that you may need to produce will really depend on how much electricity that you need to keep alive. Now for me, luckily I'm not on any medication, so obviously then I don't have medication that I have to keep refrigerated to keep me alive. Nor do I have to wear a CPAP at night, nor do I live in an area where it gets so hot that I have to have air conditioning so I don't die in extreme heat. So while if electricity did get shut off in my area for days or weeks at a time, it would be a nuisance for me, but it wouldn't kill me. So I'm able to get away with one of those smaller solar generators just to really basically keep a light going and keep my emergency radios charged and small things like that. But I will tell you this, if I did require electricity in order to stay alive, such as keeping medications refrigerated or keeping my CPAP machine running or something like that, I would definitely be looking at being able to produce my own electricity to run those life-saving machines or whatever that I need. Now folks, I am not saying there is a 100% chance that we are going to see cities on fire across the United States should Trump get elected a second presidency. All I am saying is that I believe that there is a high likelihood of that happening. Again, to defeat the monster, you got to think like the monster. Now, I know there's going to be some people that's going to comment down below with saying that there is no way that Trump is going to be elected a president a second time because he's going to be in a prison cell, or there's going to be too much election fraud to allow that to happen. And all I have to say is that if you are one of those black-pilled people that say that, all I really got to say that is that since the last election, there have been more swing states that have passed more election laws that's going to make election fraud much more difficult to pull off. I do think that there will be election fraud, but it's going to be more difficult to pull off. Also, too, Trump, as a former president, has to have Secret Service around him all the time. So I really don't see him being in a prison cell, because how are they going to have him in a prison cell with Secret Service agents with him in that prison cell? And then lastly, too, every time they commit lawfare against him, every time they indict him on something new, it just grows his base more and more. Even I myself originally was going to support a different conservative candidate, but the more that they have went after Trump legally, the more I have gotten behind him. So I am 100% going to vote Trump in the primaries. So what's all your thoughts on this? Do you think that we're going to see a second Trump presidency? And if we do you think that we're going to see massive riots across the United States? Not just for a little bit during his presidency, but over most of that 4 years. Comment down below with your thoughts on this. And to see a playlist of how you can make different natural medicines from the plants and the trees that grow in your own backyard, then click on the playlist that should be appearing on the screen just about now to learn what the vast majority of other people don't know. Anyways, folks, this is enough internet for me today. I do need to get back to work. And folks, if you made it this far, hey, thank you very much for watching, and I pray that you have a good night.